I'd just like to take you through our current thinking about the master plan and how we can create public spaces and new streets which are going to create a great place to live and work for the people on the site, but also for the people of Deptford. And first of all, we'll be looking at the context of the site, its proximity to the river, and some of the historic legacy from the shipyards themselves and from John Evelyn. And John Evelyn is particularly critical in that process. And some of the work that we've been doing so far is in researching the history of the site, and there are a lot of interested parties in the local community who are involved in that and who can make a fantastic contribution to that. And we've been looking at how some of the historic elements of the gardens which were on and adjacent to the site could possibly be incorporated or expressed within the network of streets and spaces, whether it's particular components of the original 17th century gardens, the avenue, the parterre, the kitchen gardens, and grove, and so on. Could those be actually used to form some of the characteristics of the streets and spaces, but in an authentic way, rather than it simply being possibly a reproduction of the gardens themselves? Of course, it isn't just about John Evelyn and Sayers Court Gardens. The influence of the river and of the dockyards and the shipbuilding that went on there is just as important. We think it's important that water is expressed on the site, whether that's through pools and fountains in creating attractive streets and spaces, but also is there a function about water which can be expressed and articulated, whether it's about sustainable drainage, about capturing rainwater to support trees and shrubs and planting and some of the rich horticultural legacy that we want to express here. So in a sense, there are two aspects which might inform how we develop the master plan in the future. There's the idea of greening nature and the rich horticultural legacy that's coming from, if you like, from Sayers Court Gardens into the site. And then there's the influence of the river and water coming from the river into the site, almost like two hands coming together. So this sheet here expresses some ideas about greening, whether it's about some of the components of Sayers Court Gardens, things like the grove and the parterre. Could those be expressed in a contemporary way to give different characteristics to the streets and the open spaces and the parks and so on? Or could there be a much more contemporary expression of the kind of 17th century garden? So it'd be bringing it up to date, but what's key to it is that there's a rich horticultural element to it. There are other opportunities that we might also consider in terms of urban food production. It's very much towards the top of the urban agenda now in terms of how we can grow things within the city to ensure that transportation costs are limited and so on. And I know we might really consider how that could be incorporated into some of the open spaces. And also that would involve potentially local people, school children, local community groups in getting involved actively in shaping their own environment. We think it's actually critical that the landscape is an integrated part of the master plan. There's a real opportunity here to create some great public spaces, parks, city squares and streets. And we think they can make a fantastic contribution to the Deptford Centre and to the environment, bringing people to the river, opening up the site, which hasn't been open for many, many years now. And importantly, that we can use some of the very interesting, exciting legacies of the site, whether it's John Evelyn or the shipyards, to actually create an authentic interpretation of that within a contemporary landscape.